Welcome to the show, Kelsey. Obviously, I'm a new face. My name is Tyler. I am Kelsey's husband. And yeah, we just spent the weekend up in Dallas and kind of put this video off to the last minute. So we decided to do our own little podcast where I'm going to interview her. So I'm really excited about this. So in today's conversation, we're going to discuss, your diagnosis in high school, what it was like to flip the script, your move to China, your career, and lastly, our marriage. And then, as always, we're going to end with some lightning round questions where you get to hear, some of Kelsey's favorite things that she's doing right now. So with that, you ready to rock and roll?
Let's go.
Perfect. So the first question reads, what kind of kid were you? But what I want to ask is, were you like a joyful, happy-go-lucky kid? Were you a serious, solemn, just kind of like, kind of do my own thing kind of a vibe? Tell me about your childhood vibe.
My childhood vibe, I think, I would say very playful, elementary school, very creative, inventing like games in the woods with our neighbors and my sister. Yep. We would like create all sorts of really unique sports with whatever we could find in the garage. So hyper creative as kids. I was very, I'll say, emo and ornery as a middle schooler. Shocker.
I do. Hey, spoiler alert, I do know that.
And love myself some Dashboard Confessional, some Good Charlotte. I would Sharpie my nails as an act of open rebellion. And so I'll say creative and goofy in elementary school, ornery and emo in middle school.
That is quite the jump.
And then I would say military and very preppy in high school because I ended up going to a private Catholic school and I was enrolled in the military program at that school. So it was a result of that. But I also enjoyed wearing Oxfords. I'm wearing one right now. And so that continued forward for the years to go.
Well, if you guys don't know, Oxford shirts are some of Kelsey's absolute favorite shirts of all time. So keep that in your back pocket. But that is quite the jump. Mm-hmm. You're going from a super creative to a super independent, I hate the world kind of a vibe into a military complex, essentially. Yes. I don't even know what to call that, but that's cool. Because it makes sense to me as your husband seeing all those different facets of you. They basically kind of like spring up in flares, and you can really use those to your advantage, which again allows you to flip the script. It gives you a unique advantage in life. And I love that she comes up with all these really fun, slogans or taglines to really help drive points home. I love that about you.
Well, let me throw this back to you. How have you seen maybe those three flavors of your wife appear in our 12 years of marriage?
Oh boy. When you dance and just get super like out of nowhere, just start, doing some shimmies or whatever, and you get like really goofy and you start laughing, and I'm just like, where is this coming from? Because like earlier you'll be like, really focused, in the zone, maybe like working, and, you're just like, crushing it, as anyone does, really in the zone. And then there's some times where you're just like, I just need my time and do not want to be by you. That sounds harsh. It's not. She just, needs to recharge and replug or plug back in. But I am very much the opposite of that, as I want to be, I'm an extrovert at heart and always want to be by you. And so I've had to learn how to disengage at times, even when I do want to engage, to make sure that you are feeling respected and loved in that way.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful when it works.
Hey, it doesn't work all the time, but it works.
But when it happens, it's amazing.
Yeah. So let's go back and let's talk about your household. So I know your family very well, but the audience doesn't. So let's talk a little bit about mom, dad. Do you have any siblings? Anyone on the spectrum? Anyone neurodivergent in your family?
So I am middle child. We're all 3 years apart. Younger sister, older brother, and mom and dad married their whole lives, and I would say with a high probability that my father is definitely neurodivergent, undiagnosed, but it's like these things align.
Yeah.
And that conversation has yielded no fruit, but that's okay. I can interact with my father knowing those things about him and just be cognizant of when he's flooded or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. What about your brother and your sister?
I would say they are your typical American kids in terms of my sister was in competitive dance. My brother was in traveling baseball. He was wide receiver in football. We both went to a pretty reputable high school, Creighton Hall, and he played baseball there. And so yes, very like classic Americana. And then I was your like kid picking grass at said baseball games or exploring said conference centers for the dance competitions, either reading books or making games up with other kids that were there. And yeah, just tried to go with the flow. I think my mother would say young Kelsey was very, very patient, and she always appreciated that.
Quick side note, speaking of Creighton Hall, if my memory serves me correctly, you tutored Michael Floyd, correct? Or he was in your class?
Yes, I mean, I was a TA for the chem teacher, and Mike Floyd is is he a pro athlete now?
He was a pro football player, just absolute stud. I think I was in the same grade as him, wide receiver, went to Notre Dame. I think he played for the Patriots and Cardinals, but Kelsey got to tutor a pro athlete, so that is her big claim to fame at Creighton Hall.
Or the captain of the New York Rangers, Ryan McDonough.
That's right.
Was a very, very, like, both of them are like unbelievably sweet and very smart people. Like, you often see in films, like the jocks are these jerks that like are dumb as rocks. Yeah. And something that was really interesting about Creighton is like the academics were so strong that one, like that was always present, and then two, these very, very, very talented athletes were also remarkably kind. I think there's one that like I can point out that I'm not going to name that was just a jackhole.
Sure.
But by and large, I knew a number of people that, were signed as like sophomores or juniors to like D1 schools that went on to the Air Force Academy, or they became pro athletes. And I have nothing but lovely things to say about those people.
That's awesome. And this is like the perfect segue into high school, mm-hmm. Kelsey. I think that's a really important time for you because, you're really trying to figure it out, but you're also, still kind of undiagnosed and didn't get diagnosed until 16, correct?
15.
Yeah, 15.
Or so. Yeah. And so I also at this time, emo Kelsey, who was hanging out with maybe a suboptimal crowd in terms of life choices in middle school. I was in a public middle school in the suburbs of St. Paul in a town called Egan. So I was public school K through 8, and then 9th grade through 12th grade, I went to a private school. So I also said goodbye to all the people I knew, went to a brand new Catholic school where I did not grow up with those kids. And so back to my diagnosis, the reason I was diagnosed is I would say very inappropriate things all the time, like the wildest, craziest things that people would be like, what did she just say? And I took great pride in that. I like that. I felt like I was the most authentic person in the room. So I was just going to say the thing that was very outlandish. And it was definitely an attention-seeking activity. I also really struggled to focus in school. And so initially I was actually diagnosed with ADD and ADHD when they were separate diagnoses. So I was given Ritalin and Adderall and all the things that you give a kid in America, unfortunately. And it like wasn't necessarily like fixing it, air quote fixing it. And so we went back and we got a second diagnosis, and that's where they said like, hey, I think you might have Asperger's, which is a higher form of autism. High functioning is a very charged word, but that's what it is. It's like right in that gray area between ADHD and Asperger's, or the autism spectrum. I think they're actually very closely connected. And again, as a woman, that often goes undiagnosed for a very long time. So I feel grateful that I got diagnosed, but when that moment came, the paper was delivered by the therapist after they did this big survey of loved ones, family members, like they did the full gamut. It was like, oh, I'm autistic, like, so I'm broken, I am stupid, I am all these really charged, secret judgments that people have of people with
Which
autism.
she is none of those things.
But, right, those secret judgments of like, well, I'm in this people group. I thought I was smart. I thought I was, like it challenges your perspective of like what you believed you were. And I was just devastated. So Kelsey is officially a jerkhole that has Asperger's. That's kind of how it was viewed of like, okay, we now know why she says inappropriate things. Cool, let's move on. And so there wasn't necessarily a lot of integration work where you went to therapy to like, grow in your social skills or whatnot in a very formal, programmatic way. And so the diagnosis happened and felt terrible about it, was very upset about it because the DSM-4 at the time has like 7 core attributes of autism, and they're all very, very negatively charged language. And so I read that and I was just like, well, I'm just an awful person. And, hyperfixation, verbally insensitive, or any number of things. So I read those and it felt like a life sentence where I was going to be trapped to a lesser life. And I met the most wonderful woman in our church, and her name was Deb Jordan. She really challenged me as a 16-year-old to flip the script and ask myself, well, Kelsey, there's no cure for autism. So what if you actually saw this thing, this divergence in your brain, as a good thing instead of just a life sentence where you are just destitute to, not have a job, not have friends, etc. And I thought that was absolute bullshit. I thought it was like a Hallmark card she was trying to sell me. And I fought and I thrashed against that for probably like 4 to 5 years. I was like, whatever, Deb, like, you're wrong. It sucks. My life is over. And again, she's lovingly kept repeating that. She's like, but it could be a good thing. Like, again, there's no pill that you can take for your autism to tangle that. There is no thing that we have right now in science. So like, how do you make the best of it? And so in time, after almost being worn down in a loving way, I said like, okay, well, what if I use my hyperfixation to do really well in my high school courses, or to become an expert on Sino-American trade policy, or to learn German, to learn Chinese, Mandarin. And so what I did, like these weird things I used to be obsessed with, like the Titanic, that did not help me at all.
I love that movie.
Well, I hated the movie because
I loved watching it with you.
Because I love the ship itself, not the love story on the ship. And I was so angry that they did that as a 4th grader. And so I just said, like, I made a conscious choice to say, like, you know what, I'm going to be obsessed about X, and it's going to help me get into college. It's going to help me get into, these various career goals. And that was a huge unlock. And I would say that has been my secret sauce, is looking at the negative attributes listed in the DSM, the Diagnostic Strategic Manual, I think, is what that stands for, and see all those things as good things, and like see autism, Asperger's as my superpower. And there's kryptonite in the world, and I have to navigate that kryptonite. And so if I understand what kryptonite is, I can either, avoid it or contain it in such a way that allows me to be successful.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack in there, and I think we will have to do a separate video on that. But I mean, yeah, just to hear, I obviously know your journey, but just to hear it again in the light of, this podcast and this context, I mean, it is so remarkable. And, Deb coming into not only just your life, but our lives being that thing that really did bring us together is pretty wild and really cool.
We just listened to a podcast driving back from Dallas, and it talked about 1x, 10x, and 1000x relationships. And like, you should invest in your 1000x relationships. And I think about that relationship with Deb being like a 1000x relationship where it changed everything. And just to like unpack what that relationship looked like this adult befriends a teenager. She was my small group leader in church, but it went beyond the parameters of just youth group. And we would walk 1 to sometimes 3 times a week, 2.5 miles, 45 minutes. And she would really challenge me in the assumptions I was making. One weird fun thing that a lot of people don't know that I can do is I can identify cars by their headlights, like up to a mile away.
That is a very accurate statement.
It's very quirky, to say the least. And so I would pray for people based off of their car and based off of the headlights. So if I saw like the Ford Explorer, which is her vehicle, I would pray for her. And so if I saw a bunch of Ford Explorers, I'd be like, are you having a good day? But she would challenge me. So I would get very obsessed with like labels of like, oh, well, that's a Mercedes or that's a Porsche.
Burberry.
Or whatnot. And she'd be like, Kelsey, but that doesn't actually matter. Like, she'd really push these beliefs of like, but the person in the Mercedes is no better than the person in the Camry. And I'd be like, sure. And like, I wouldn't necessarily believe it. But like, she really challenged me, like, to again see people as people, and to really to take the premise of labels and wealth off of things, and really again try to see people for who they were, or just understand that like you can speak the truth to someone, but you need to deliver it in love. And I used to like again wear that honesty like a badge. I said that in my feedback episode where I'd be like, your haircut looks terrible, and like that's like. In hindsight, I cringe, and it's so unkind. But she was really the first person to help me unpack, like, you can speak the truth in love of like, hey, you might want to style it a different way. Or I'm not sure if, the trumpet is really your gifting.
I'm laughing because I've experienced this quite a number of times.
You've experienced both flavors.
But, big time. And it's just funny to hear about it, from you in that context.
So I would say she really like very unofficially did basically, we were friends for 12 years, and she did essentially ABA therapy, somewhat like informally. She's not a therapist. She was just a person that loved me, loved us well. But she just was like, Kelsey, let's challenge that thought. Or Kelsey, like, do you see how that could, isolate yourself from your peers if you did X or you said Y? And again, that really transformed my autistic experience to the place where people didn't believe that I had autism, in terms of like the eye contact I can make, or how I can carry a conversation, or I can like any number of things. Like, I have built those skills, but it's because I have studied it for 2 decades at this point. I've treated almost like a master's degree of like, how do I navigate at like a gold medal level, social situations, social dynamics? Okay, well, this person's speaking like this, so I need to approach them like this, or I'm going to mirror their language back to them so that they're more likely to receive the thing I'm asking for. And again, I started this at the age of 15, and I'm now 35. And so, 15 years of practicing that I was reading self-help books at 15, which is funny. Like, I was trying to like untangle and figure it out. A lot of people start that at 30. I was doing that at 15. Anyways, back to you, Ty.
Well, I'm really not kind of going off the notes here, but, I think a perfect segue is, diagnosed at 15 in college, in high school, and you were just kind of really resistant to some of those ideas that, Deb was pushing. But I really feel that you made a massive transformation in college, because that was really, I feel like it was, those few years were really prepping you for relationships in college, for the college experience itself. Because if you were diagnosed at 19, I think it would be a very different experience for you. And your experience in college is nothing short of amazing. I mean, you got you majored in international business with a minor in Mandarin. Not a lot of people can say that or do that. You had great friends in college. You navigated this whole brand new life that there were some people that didn't think that you could do that, and you absolutely proved them wrong. And I just want to know what was the overall experience like for you?
I think college was the thing I was waiting for. Like, I mean, like every angsty teenager, I was like, I can't wait to graduate. I can't wait to get out of here. So it was putting those things in practice. And something Deb told me that I was like, absolutely not. She's like, Kelsey, you're going to offend and you're going to irritate your roommates. And so you need to get good at apologizing. And I was like, what are you talking about? Which is, again, hilarious because I'm a human being and I am fallible and I'm confident I did irritating things. Fun fact, we had a kitchen inside of our dorm room and I decided to make French fries or potato chips inside the dorm and caused all of our sheets and all of our clothes to smell like McDonald's. So that would be an example of a faux pas that happened in school.
Okay. Is that really a bad thing?
Yes, it is when you didn't ask your roommate's permission to make potato chips and smell everything up.
But everyone loves the smell of French fries.
Sure. So there were various blunders. Loved my business degree. My father is a serial entrepreneur, so I feel like my whole life was like building up. I feel like my life was an MBA, and that this was just like the checking of the box of like now. I mean, I don't have an MBA, but like my bachelor's in finance.
Well, what were the contracts you guys would discuss at the dinner table growing up?
We would talk about how my dad had to sign contracts. I think like if he took a loan from his father and things like that, or we talk about things that were happening at my dad's work.
Yep.
And like, okay, well, we're going to open this office, but here's the things we have to overcome.
Yep.
Less so like, how was your lunch today, Timmy? Or or things like that. It was like, oh gosh, the Kentucky government, the tax codes and then Louisville County is crazy. And so we talk about really, really nerdy finance things. My dad was a CFO of a home health care company. So we talked about tax codes and government bureaucracy and all sorts of weird things that most families don't talk about.
But again, you took that into life, and
I leveraged it.
Like you leveraged it big time,
Yeah.
and you obviously leveraged that in college.
I mean, when I took finance, I did not need to read the book, and I know that sounds really like arrogant, but I was like, yeah, the stock market, like puts, calls, bonds, like mute, like. I got this. I know these like inside and out. So that was kind of fun. And I ended up taking one of my flexes is that because of my autistic superpower, I took 36 credits in like, we'll call it one semester plus a month. So what I did is I double enrolled in my traditional private Christian school undergrad, but then I also went to community college because I had to get, it was like 165 credits for my degree with my minor. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to graduate fast, like Alexander Hamilton. And so I just hyper focused, locked myself in the library basement, put my phone on airplane mode and just like really hyper focused. Oh, another nerdy thing I did is I made a software program to learn Mandarin. Mm-hmm. And then I tried to sell it to my classmates who did not buy it. But, and then the adjacent college used the same textbook. And so I tried to go up the road and sell it to them. It didn't work, but I created a software program to teach myself Chinese, which is kind of fun.
She also, as a elementary schooler, used to make beaded animals, and she would open up her jacket at school, her jean jacket, and she would have them all lined up with prices, and kids were buying them like hotcakes. And then one day, the principal says, "You can't do that anymore." And what else happened?
Well,
how'd it go?
Like the teacher, I think, told the principal because the kids were asking their parents for money
For lunch. Oh, yeah.
They wanted more money, and the parents were like, "What the heck's going on at this school?"
That's
and I was selling bead creatures because I was hustling because I had been taught the entrepreneurial spirit at a very young age. And my parents bought the beads for me, so my cost of goods sold were nothing. And so it was pure profit. And I probably made like $45. But I got sent to the principal's office because I was like making the school place a place of commerce. And I like
Is that a bad thing?
I would say not. And on top of that, I was like, I have a product that they want to buy. Like I'm not selling drugs. I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not even selling candy. I'm selling like arts and crafts out of my jean jacket. Like some shady person in New York City selling fake watches. I must have seen that on a show, but I pinned them to the inside of my jacket. And but the funny part was I was lecturing my principal on like economics 101 supply and demand as like a 9-year-old.
Well, so again, this is a great transition. Like, he wasn't very supportive of that, which is crazy to me.
The school was keeping me down.
The school was just crushing your entrepreneurial dreams.
They're anti-capitalist.
Yeah. At that time, they didn't know you had autism, and that really has nothing to do with the entrepreneurial spirit.
No, they just hated money.
It just hated money. But switching into college, did you get any support in your autism?
So there was something called the DOS program, and it was like Disability Office of Student Services, maybe. It has a new name now. So I received some support around like writing in terms of like Comp 1, Comp 2 classes, because frickin' getting your case to match and to like have verb tense agreement, like I still can't do that.
I don't even know what that means.
So I got help in that regard, but beyond that, no. I think for finance, when I broke my knee and I was taking oxycodone, I got to have bonus testing time, and the oxycodone definitely helped with my testing scores to help reduce my anxiety. Obviously not a sustainable solution, but
wait, so did you get good grades?
I
on that one?
Rushed my finance tests like during that time, and it was definitely proof positive that I had major test anxiety, because I could lecture on any of the topics that we were studying, but then when it came to the actual tests themselves, I'd bomb them. And that was my high school experience as well.
Right.
Is like I could lecture on Alexander the Great and his 3 to 4 generals that he split his empire by, but like ask me to answer a multiple choice question, good luck.
Well, do you think that there's an opportunity for people that are on the spectrum who are neurodivergent that would benefit from like, hey, I know you're not good at taking tests. What are you good at? And let's explore that and learn how to best communicate that.
I think that's only unfortunately available maybe through charter schools, private schools that don't have to teach to a test, or homeschool, because public schools are structured in such a way where they have to follow standardized tests, and those teachers are graded about how well their students do relative to that state test. And so I think that's the challenge, is like I am certain my teachers understood that I knew the content, but when it came to your standardized testing, I did not show up well. Like, I failed the SAT and I 1489, because my birthday is January 14th of 1989, which felt ominous. And then I got, I think, like a 16 on my ACT. So again, felt horrible, but I was like, I know I'm smart. Like, I will make it in life.
You did.
But in that moment, it did not feel great.
Yeah. Did I know that your teachers knew that you weren't great at like did they know that you were on the spectrum and neurodivergent?
In high school, yes.
But
I would say
especially
like
college.
college, I would say I didn't even volunteer it because I felt like I had managed it pretty well. And so I didn't need to do that. But like, I knew that I had to go to all the office hours. I knew I needed a tutor in those subjects. I took accounting 3 times, which is why you and I hire an accountant, because I vowed to not do that. I think I got a pity pass the third time. I was just like, here, you've done your due diligence. So yeah, I actually felt like it wasn't relevant to my like college experience, which was interesting in hindsight.
Well, yeah, I asked because, like if the teacher, especially if the professors know that you are, everything inside and out, we're just going to skip that. This is going great. It's going very good. So, you spent the summer of 2010 in Inner Mongolia. Why were you there? What did you do? And did you have fun?
I was there. So my degree is in international business, and so I had to spend a semester abroad. And I taught at an English immersion summer camp, which was unbelievably wild because it was like 250 kids of all ages learning. Like we designed the curriculum like a summer camp, so it was like education based, but it was sport, it was music, and we are in the middle of nowhere. We're like at the Russian border in northeast China is the best way I can describe it. And outside of the village of Hailar, but like middle of nowhere. And that was really challenging in terms of like meltdowns and navigating a different culture, different food, different language. Probably the best summer of my life, no doubt. It was just remarkable. One fun antidote is that the children, there's one child policy in China. And so as a result, you have a lot of children that have been kind of given their way because they are all like, imagine a country of only children, predominantly only children. And so one of the kids said, if you don't let me like use my cell phone during class or let me go get a snack during class, the issue is they wouldn't come back. I'm going to call my uncle who's a police officer. I'm going to call him. I was like, watch me. I was like, I dare you, little child. I will not be extorted by an 8-year-old as a 20-year-old myself. And that child made good on their promise. And they called the police who, someone told the police, the local police, that we were starving. These Americans were starving the Chinese children, which you could imagine is a kind of a big deal. So the police come to camp, they investigate the camp, and we explain to them that like we're feeding them 3 meals a day. We just don't let them like snack during class or go get their snacks because like the issue was they would just walk the camp and they wouldn't come back. And we had a lack of staff. So anyways, we cleared up that significant miscommunication that the Americans were not starving and hurting their children. And then the evening wrapped up with a challenge to play basketball against them. And I'll link some photos to this basketball game. If you're watching the video, you can see it. And we absolutely obliterated them because we had like a number of D2. Weirdly, we had D2 and D3 basketball players at this camp as Americans who had been playing basketball their whole lives, understandably. And we absolutely crushed them. But the whole town came in. It was like USA versus China. People were standing on the walls like, what's going on? And it was a great summer.
Sounds like a great scene from a movie.
Yes, it was, very cinematic.
Let's switch over to your career. So what was your first job out of college?
So I started in finance because that was really the track that was most interesting to me. It seemed the most lucrative. I had a love of art history, but I was very pragmatic. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be poor. And so I'm going to go into finance. Went into finance. I was shocked at how archaic the industry was in terms of like I was doing fax reports, like wiring faxes, faxing wires back in 2011, 2012. And I was like, robots are going to take all these people's jobs. And there was this industry called tech that was really like blowing up. And these tech companies were giving all sorts of perks to their employees because it was so competitive to hire talent. And I was like, maybe I should switch industries. So I took a significant pay cut to go work for a friend and their small business. And I was kind of like the Jill of all trades. And website management. I was customer support. I helped do project management at this itty bitty startup for a friend. And then that became a foothold that allowed me to go work for, we'll say, a more traditional startup. And that startup was called Smart Things. They were bought by Samsung not too long into my time there. I was employee 40. And yeah, Uncle Samsung bought us and we were suddenly very, very rich and we got to travel the world. And I became a product manager, which the best way I can describe what a product manager is, they're responsible for shaping and discovering like the right things to build that are going to move a company forward as in terms of a software solution. So they work with designers, they work with engineers, they understand executive needs, they connect with customers, and they blend all those things together and help identify like what's the next thing we're going to go build that's going to make a world of difference. And so I lobbied for that role. And a gentleman named Mike Stoller, who may or may not be listening to this, became like one of those advocates. There was someone else in a position of power that I asked for help, and that person was like, I'm not your person. I'm not going to be your advocate. And it was a woman, and I was so discouraged by that I made a vow to myself that one day I would be in a position of power, of authority, and I would try to make a way as wide as possible for anyone to come behind me so that like they could change their stars, to quote Knight's Tale. And yeah, that manager did, Mike Stoller, amazing guy. And I've been in product management for the last 10 years at a series of startups.
I remember when that individual pretty much shirked you off, and
I was so discouraged.
Yeah, I was like
heartbroken that a fellow woman, just wouldn't help another woman out.
I had some choice words that I would have loved to have said, but ultimately, it has worked. It's
been good.
It has been
a catalyst.
Again. She flipped the script.
Yeah.
She could have taken a very bad thing and sat in bitterness, and she obviously did not do that. So
I would say, looking back at my career, I think I could say with confidence, helped 12 people, either through mentorship or direct training, go from customer support into quality assurance, which is like another path I took, or go from customer support into product management in varying degrees, right? I've come alongside those people. But whenever someone does like say, hey, I'm interested, I always try to give them as much as time or resources as possible. Sometimes those people just they see the paycheck and they're like, I want that money, but they don't actually have the skill set. But I always try to do everything that I can to come alongside those people because of what had happened to me back when I was 23.
Yeah. Finally, let's switch over to our lives.
Yeah.
We've been married it'll be 12 years in July. And how would you describe our marriage?
I would say intense. I would say we're curators. We have our massive ups, massive downs. But I would also say we're very, very we love to curate experiences. We love to find the best of anything, which I guess goes back to my love of fancy cars. We always we just moved to Austin 3 years ago. So we're on the hunt for the best Vietnamese food or best tacos, best steak, etc. And so it's funny because our friends are hey, where should we go? We're in Minneapolis tonight, and we're looking for this. So I think that's something we love to curate things. We love to distill and understand those things. I would say that you and I are opposites at home and at work. And so I would say at work, I'm very playful and I would say at your work, like you're very, very, very driven. And then I would say at home, you're more playful.
Oh, yeah.
And then at home for me, I'm like, no, we got to do these 86 projects.
And I just wanted to chill.
Correct. And so that's been definitely challenging.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other way to cut that. And then naturally navigating my neurodivergence has also been challenging.
I've been perfect in everything. So no, I mean, I've been a handful too. And so, yeah, taking both of our handfuls and trying to,
Build a life
together has had significant challenges, but it's also had significant upside. And I do love our life. I really do. And I think you saying we're curators, I couldn't think of a better word, because we do love the best. And I mean, well, I already drank it, but I drink the best water. Yeah, the best.
You believe you drink the best water.
Well, that can be scientifically proven otherwise. But anyways, yeah, I love our life, and I love what we're doing, and I love that I get to support you in this podcast, and it's been an absolutely fantastic experience. And I hope I get to do this more, because it's been really fun, and it just, yeah, I think it's just going to cause a lot of reflection and great thoughts in people that are going to listen to this. So
let me ask you this. What would you say has been a key element to our sustained 12 years of success, right? Like, we're still married. We've had lots of ups and downs. You're married to a neurodivergent woman. What would you tell yourself 12 years ago, knowing what you know now? That's one of my favorite questions to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really simple. Don't give up and persevere. Because, I mean, you look at how many people end in divorce. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I don't want us to be another statistic. And I know that, I mean, we've gone through hell with this house. We've gone through hell with other things. And knowing that we're going to come out stronger, even when you know it, but when you're in the midst of the extreme hardship, it is really difficult. But if you just know, and you're like, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to persevere, I'm going to work whatever that muscle is in the brain that only works or only gets bigger when you do hard things, and in my love for you. So yeah, that's kind of the short and long of it. But we are going to send it back to you for some lightning round questions. Last great book you've read?
Shoot, I should know these questions by heart, because I ask them every week. Last great book I've read, I would say that I would recommend everyone read. Most people read, would be Read This When You're Ready to Heal, When You're Ready, This Is How You Heal. And the second book is The Mountain Is You, and it's how to go from self-sabotage to self-mastery. I have read both of those books probably 4 times, because it's been so impactful, especially navigating burnout in tech and some of the tech situations that we've gone through. Yeah, those would be my books.
All right. Those sound like great books. Advice you'd give to your younger self?
I would say be present. Deb told me that, do all things in moderation. The key to life is moderation. I thought that was bullshit advice. I was like, no, I love extremes. So I would say, but I think be present and moderation, they go hand in hand. I think don't try to just microwave and fast forward your life. I was so excited to be an adult, so excited to have my own bank account, to have all sorts of liberties. But sometimes you let your childhood pass you by because you're so looking for the next stage, or we're married. Okay, well, what's next? What's retirement, or whatever it might be? And I think the idea, actually, here's another one that's in my office, and the phrase is, these are the good old days. And remembering that we're going to look back 5 years from now and be like, oh, those were fun days. Like they were hard, but they were fun.
Absolutely. When you're flooded and overwhelmed, what's your hack to self-regulate?
Sometimes it is reading a book, jumping in bed, maybe between phone calls, like Zoom calls, if I had a tough Zoom meeting. I go for walks. I would say like the worse my life is, the more walks I take. So I might take like multiple walks during the workday and call it my lunch break. And meditation has really helped as well.
Yeah. Favorite neurodivergent purchase?
Sorry, one last thing I wanted to ask about self-regulation. I said this in a TikTok video, but it is like wearing like tight clothing. Like you can see my sleeves on the Oxford, if you're watching the video, are cuffed. I'm wearing a Whoop band, which tracks my stress. And I usually wear leather loafers that are rather tight, or I wear like skinny jeans, not because I'm skinny, but because again, it's that pressure, that uniform pressure really helps to manage angst. Neurodivergent purchase, I would say one would be my loops, and that's because all of my guests kept recommending them, so I've bought that, and it's been a game changer. But the second thing, I'm going to break my own rule and say my second favorite thing is my Whoop band, because it makes me aware of how much time I spend in high stress situations. And I can see like, oh, when I had a call with Charlie Parker, my stress went up 60%. Maybe I should not talk to Charlie Parker about jazz music or whatever that might be. And so it's been really, really insightful to see like my sleep performance, sleep consistency, as I try to get more in balance.
What song, playlist, or artist do you keep on repeat?
I would say, you're going to laugh, it's going to be Sweater Weather Instrumentals on Spotify. It's probably like my go-to soothe, chill out music or lo-fi beats, depending on like what mode of like, is Kelsey anxious in the car? Is she upset? Does she need to focus? But any number of like no word, instrumental or EDM music helps.
Sweater Weather Instrumentals is amazing, and we are not promoted to say that.
One last thing I wanted to say is that when I really, really need to focus, I go to noisily.com, noisli.com. And what I do is like, it's a noise machine, and you can turn on like a train, a fireplace, a thunderstorm, lightning, rain on the windows. And so I tune all that so that like I am like on a train going somewhere in a storm. There's a fireplace crackling, and then I will go into Spotify and I will turn on piano music. So I like, it puts me in this place where I am in a train car, someone's playing piano inside the train car, and that like gets me in the zone because I've trained my mind. Like that's what I studied Chinese to. So like, I don't know, noisily, that is the jam.
We also train for meditation as well.
We use train on Headspace. There's a
night train.
Yeah, it's a sleep cast is what they call it. And that puts you out in 30 seconds.
I know. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get all the way through the breathing,
and then he's like, so that's helped as well.
Last question: best advice you've been given?
What if autism really was your superpower? And I think that's the advice and consideration I would give to the audience today is, what if you took any of your diagnoses, perceived, like maybe you're not officially diagnosed, maybe you are, and you looked up in the DSM, like what does it say about you and your autism spectrum disorder, or again, I DSM, I have real beef with them, or anxiety, dyslexia, etc. And what if you actually saw those bullet points as positive things that you could really lean into that might really bless and empower your life instead of like contain or restrict who you are?
Right. So look in that camera, and I want you to leave a final thought or just something with the audience.
Thanks for listening, and I hope that this was fun listening to my husband and I go back and forth talking about my life, and we'll see you guys next week.